Hello and welcome to Behind the Headlines for the week ending June 5th, 2020. I'm Michael Kern from the Ottawa Business Journal. Behind the Headlines is a new podcast from OBJ to explore the top stories of the week. And these are the stories that are mainly determined by you, OBJ readers, based on the popularity of the news coverage. In today's podcast, we take a look at a massive new business park planned for Ottawa, some fresh statistics on the city's residential real estate market, and finally a shared economy startup that's helping people go on vacation this summer. So let's go behind the headlines right now, and please welcome Peter Kavesi and David Sally, two of OBJ's editors. Welcome to you both. All right, so story number one, as mentioned, is this story about a massive new business park planned for Ottawa. Dave, you've been looking into this. Give us a sense of what's happening.
Yeah, Mike. Well, as you say, it is a massive business park, 1 million square feet of office, warehouse, and industrial space. Now, it'll be located on 100 acres of federal land that's owned by the NCC near the corner of Hunt Club Road and Highway 417. Now, the application was just recently filed at City Hall. The application is actually the brainchild of a local real estate investment firm called Avenue 31, and in their proposal, they want to create a premier business and industrial park, as they refer to it, at NCC-owned property at 4120 and 4055 Russell Road. They're looking for a 99-year lease from the federal agency to develop the property, which is just west of the Hunt Club Highway 417 interchange in the Hawthorne-Stevenage Industrial Park. It would be called the National Capital Business Park, and it would be, like we say, a massive project. 6 buildings in various sizes. The biggest one would be 700,000 square feet, just north of Russell Road. There would be 5 other buildings ranging from 88,000 square feet to 110,000 square feet, just south of Russell Road. And they say that these buildings would suit the growing needs of the region's logistics and industrial users. Avenue 31 calls the property one of the few sites of its size in all of the National Capital Region capable of responding to a large logistics and warehouse user. They say that its location near major transportation routes would make it a prime hub for companies looking to distribute goods, like e-commerce firms, for example. And so we can only guess that it probably would be an e-commerce user. That would be the tenant here. Now, Avenue 31 didn't respond to OBJ's request for comments, and an NCC spokesperson said the agency went through the usual real estate solicitation process to find potential tenants for the property, but wouldn't provide any more details.
So, Peter, let's get your perspective on this. Ottawa has had a bit of a shortage when it comes to industrial space. Tell us about why this development might be so significant.
Well, very specifically, Ottawa's had a shortage of modern industrial space located in the locations where developers and end users actually want to be located, which is primarily close to the highway interchanges. What's really interesting about this one is that this is on NCC property, as Dave mentioned, and for a long time, people in Ottawa's commercial real estate industry have highlighted how the NCC has several of these parcels close to the highway, close to existing business parks, and unlocking some of those lands for development would help go a long way to ease this shortage of vacant industrial space at a time when we are seeing demand just skyrocket because of the huge growth in e-commerce, which of course necessitates these big, large-scale distribution and fulfillment centers.
I think one of the things that'll be interesting with this story is to figure out what's exactly going on and what companies are involved, because Dave's said, and you repeated, Peter, that this is kind of ideally suited for e-commerce and logistics. So anyway, we'll move on to story number 2. Last week, we talked about some predictions about how Ottawa's residential real estate market might weather the storm in terms of sales and valuations. Peter, we now have some hard statistics on May, so bring us up to speed on the latest numbers on home sales.
Well, certainly the latest figures do suggest that those predictions are are holding true. What's I think surprising a lot of people is just how much Ottawa's home prices are not just holding their own during the COVID-19 pandemic, but basically the rapid ascent that we've seen in recent months has continued uninterrupted. So in the month of May, the average home sale price increased 11% year over year. The average home is now trading for almost $550,000. What's also interesting is the actual number of home sales, and to put things into a bit of context, May and June are always the busiest months for home sales, particularly in the nation's capital. So there were slightly more than 1,300 homes trading hands in the month of May, and there's a few ways of looking at it. On the downside, that is down 44% year over year, which of course is a huge number. However, if you're looking to put a more optimistic spin on that, the year over year decline is actually down from April. So there are, again, one more sign, small sign, that we are inching towards a recovery. For me personally, the fact that there was still 1,300 homes trading hands, despite all the physical distancing requirements that are still in place, really does, I guess, speak to a few things. First of all, just that pent-up demand for real estate in Ottawa, and it really does sort of reinforce some of the other economic indicators that we're seeing, namely that employment in the federal government as well as the high-tech sector, so really well-paid sectors, generally speaking, that's been holding steady throughout the crisis, which seems to again be supporting the capital's real estate market.
So, Dave, that's the residential side, of course. So, numbers down a little bit, value in terms of number of sales, valuation up a little bit. That's good. But bring us up to speed on the commercial side of this, the office spaces and industrial.
Yeah, well, absolutely, Mike. So earlier this week, I talked to Bruce Wolfgram. He's very well known in the Ottawa real estate community. He's a principal at Priveris Commercial Realty. Yeah, I was asking him, what's the market like right now, Bruce? And he said it's actually holding up quite well. Despite the downturn in the economy, what's been happening in the past couple of months. Yeah, he says there is a certain amount of anxiety among landlords and tenants right now, as you would expect. Nobody's quite sure where the economy is heading and how fast it's going to recover. But he said that despite that, there's been no shortage of interest in vacant office properties in Ottawa in the last few weeks. He says Priveris is currently in a number of negotiations with landlords on behalf of the tenants it represents. They're still looking for long-term leases. And he says, in particularly the office, the commercial office space sector, things are going well, better than in the industrial, and in particular, better than the retail sector right now, which is really suffering. Just as an example of the office sector and the fact that there's still business happening, Priveris recently negotiated a long-term lease for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. They're going to take over 35,000 square feet of space on 3 floors at 66 Slater Street. Now those floors used to be occupied by the federal government, and the FCM was looking around for new space. They have a headquarters at 24 Clarence Street in the Market. They're going to maintain that space, but they need spillover space. They were at 10 Rideau Street next to the Rideau Center. They needed more space, and they looked at a number of locations before deciding on 66 Slater. So Bruce is saying that that there is still a lot of interest out there among landlords and tenants, and that was kind of borne out as well by a report from another Ottawa brokerage, Real Strategy Advisors. This week they released a report that said the capital's economic situation remains fairly encouraging in the wake of the COVID-19 crisis. They did say the current slump will likely create a bit more vacancy over the next little while and put some downward pressure on rental rates, probably for the rest of the year. But in general, they think the capital region is going to fare better than most major Canadian cities. We've got that buffer there. That steady federal government employer really helps us weather these storms and kind of flatten those economic curves, if you want to call them that.
Those are interesting numbers. To some degree, I wonder how much of that are deals in the pipeline. People don't make quick decisions on leasing massive amounts of
Yeah.
space. So some of the support for those numbers might, in fact, be deals that were in the pipeline before the pandemic hit. But I get your point that with a giant tenant like the federal government, we're gonna have some stability in the market. So the last story, the third and last story today, is a fun story. It's June. It's a nice day outside. And that means that people are starting to turn their attention to going on summer vacation. And in this pandemic environment, there are very limited options, let's say, for vacation, except maybe this local company that's going to help people. So, Dave, fill us in on that story.
Yeah, well, exactly, Mike. There's actually a couple of local companies that think they have a solution for those people looking to get out of the house and go somewhere, but maybe you don't want to stay in a hotel with a bunch of other people. You don't want to get on an airplane. Well, they got the solution for you. RVing. We've been seeing the ads for a few years now, right? What is it? The RVing Association says, get back to your wildhood, that sort of thing. Well, a couple of companies in Ottawa, they can help. One of them is RVZ, which some people may have heard of. It's a peer-to-peer rental platform for RVs. So basically, it acts like it's, if you want to call it the Airbnb of RVs, well, okay. It's been around for about 4 years. They have about 7,000 motorhomes, trailers, camper vans. Owners post on the site from across Canada, and then you can go on there, rent them out for a couple of days, a week, whatever you want. And the owner and co-founder of RVZ, Michael McNaught, he's based here in Ottawa, and he says demand is exploding right now for RVs for this summer. He says they're already taking bookings, getting calls at a level they usually don't see for another month or so. And he expects his July numbers to be up about 150% over last year, which means several thousand vehicles will be rented at any given time. He said they had a great year last year, and they are hopefully on pace to just about double that this summer. And that's without knowing what's going to happen at campgrounds in Ontario and Quebec. He says right now things are really booming out west, where they've started to open up the economy a little faster than they have here in the eastern part of the country. So he's looking for good things this summer, as is another local Ottawa-based company, Ruckify, which is, again, some of you may have heard of. It's an online rental marketplace where people can offer up all kinds of stuff for their peers to rent, whether it's RVs, canoes, lawnmowers, you name it. They'll rent it. And they last fall, they acquired a Calgary-based RV rental site called Real Estate. Real Estate's got about 800 RVs, fifth wheels, and pop-up tents available for rent in Western Canada and Ontario. And Steve Cody, the founder of Ruckify, he says it's interesting. He had written, until the last couple of weeks, he'd written off the business for this year in terms of RVs. He didn't think anybody was going to be renting. And now he says suddenly demand is surging, especially in the West. He said they've already had more bookings so far this week. This was at the end of last week. He said they'd already had more bookings so far last week than they had in their previous 3 months combined. So he's really looking for business to boom this summer as people hop in their trailers and hit the road.
I hear it's almost impossible to get a pool. I was reading about that. So you can't get an RV and you can't get a pool. Anyway, this is all part of, Peter, the sharing economy, and give us a sense of what that, what's happening in that market.
Yeah, it really does feed into two trends that we've been seeing. So certainly, one of the storylines we've been hearing a lot is that this summer tourism season is going to be one of domestic tourism, people staying close to home. So that certainly feeds into road trip vacations and in this case RVs. The other I guess I find really interesting about the business model of these companies is the peer-to-peer nature of it. So what we hear from these companies is that there are a lot of households that may be under a bit of financial pressure, possibly due to a loss of income, who may be looking out in their driveway and seeing an RV, seeing an opportunity to put that up for rent to generate a little bit of income. And of course, the more vehicles that are on these sites, the more supply that's and options that are available, the more of an interesting proposition it becomes for potential consumers.
It's a great point. They're very much on trend, not only because of the summer vacation aspect, but because people are looking for extra sources of income. So listen, guys, we need to wrap up now. It's running late, but Peter, give us a sense of what's upcoming at OBJ next week.
So one of our really important annual projects is underway and is going to be being promoted next week. It's the Welch LLP Ottawa Business Growth Survey. So now we're in the 6th year. It's a measurement of business confidence levels in Ottawa. It's arguably the most important year ever for this survey, given all that's happened this year with the restrictions surrounding COVID-19. So if you go to obj.ca, you will see a link to take the survey. So we're asking business owners and managers to share their insights, their perspectives into the business outlook within their industry.
Your point's well taken, Peter, that we've done the survey 5 years in a row, but taking the survey, if you're a CEO or executive out there, is more important than ever, because we need to understand what's happening in the local economy, and to do that, we need statistics. So please check that out. And Dave, final word to you. What are you working on for next week?
Yeah, so actually, so early next week, I'll be talking with the CEO of a fairly new Ottawa startup here that has just sort of graduated from the Invest Ottawa Accelerator. They're called NAC, and they've already landed some pretty big customers in the tech space. They won't name all of them, but let's just say there are some big names. And what they do is they customize, those e-blasts that we all get, those promotional emails. Well, those take a lot of time and effort to actually design. So this company will do that for you. And they're already at about 20 employees. They've added several this month. They've been hiring throughout the pandemic, and they say that they've been doubling their revenues practically every month, and it's just continuing. And they're going to be moving into a new office soon. So kind of an interesting story of a company that's that just keeps growing throughout the recent crisis, and offers a pretty niche product.
Yeah, that's a great startup. We'll have to check them out. Maybe a service that we could be using. So listen, that's all the time we have for today. So on behalf of Peter Kovessy and David Sally, our great editors at Ottawa Business Journal, I'm Michael Curran signing off for this episode of Behind the Headlines. Be sure to continue visiting obj.ca for constantly updated coverage. You can also watch this podcast on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to get notifications of new videos. You can also check this out in audio format on Spotify and other platforms like SoundCloud. That's it for this week. Thanks for tuning in.